Kevin is trying to stage his comeback. He's been trying to do this for the last couple of years. He's kind of one of the rare instances of famous individuals who have been, who have multiple allegations, and he was acquitted in his trials, which we'll talk about, but he has not been able to come back to Hollywood. Like, he's been doing indie films, and there are some filmmakers who have no problem working with him, but by and large, like, I've seen a lot of discourse around him where people know he's a bad guy. They're like, no, this is a predator. This is someone who I can't watch his work. Like, I won't see a film that he's in. And I think that's for a number of reasons. One, he put out those weird ass videos. Like the one where he was in character as Frank Underwood. It was so strange. And then he did the Christmas video, which was so fucking weird. And then also the fact that, like, he hasn't specifically admitted to guilt in being or to responsibility for any of the accusations, but has said things like, oh, I don't remember, but if I did that to you, like, I'm sorry. Or admitting to having had sexual relationships with some of the men who have accused him of sexual abuse, but saying, like, it was consensual. And then yeah. And then just, I think the fact that a lot of people always got strange vibes from Kevin Spacey. And so, seeing that there's a pattern in his history of being predatory was, like, almost not a surprise. It's one of those things where, because of the characters that he has played throughout his career, a lot of people, when the first allegations about him came out, were not surprised to see that he is a creep. And then also, what was the other thing I was going to say? He did the videos. And then him coming out as gay after Anthony Rapp alleged sexual abuse. And that was another thing that people looked at and were like, oh, so now you come out as gay as a way to be like, oh, no, I'm not a predator. I'm just a homosexual. Okay, so let's talk about him. There is a new UK documentary that came out. I was not able to find it available online, but I think it was Investigative Discovery that did it. And it just details more new accusations against him. And so he has sat down with Fox News, he's sat down with Tucker Carlson, he has sat down with Lex Fridman. He's had a few of his homies in Hollywood come out to try and defend him and say, like, it's time to allow Kevin back. But I just don't think it's going to happen. So there are 10 new sexual misconduct allegations, which I think brings the total of individuals who have made allegations against Kevin Spacey. I think it's like over 40. Over 40 individuals who have alleged and showcased this predatory pattern of behavior. So Kevin said in an interview this week that he does not believe Hollywood offers forgiveness, but does believe there is hope that the fear spread by cancel culture will fade and common sense will get back to the table. The two-time Oscar winner's interview on the Lex Fridman podcast, released on Wednesday, comes 1 month after the documentary Spacey Unmasked premiered in the UK on May 6th. The actor posted a 20-minute response titled Kevin Spacey, Right of Reply, which streamed on X. Spacey admitted in the interview with Fridman that for years he was no angel in his private life. Speaking of the accusations both seen in Channel 4's doc and those that preceded it, he indicated that in the interest of regaining a Hollywood career, if he doesn't fight back, this will never end. I feel like this is a common tactic of men who have been exposed to have this pattern of predatory behavior where they will acknowledge that they have done things in their past that are not great, that they have, that they are not perfect, but they will try and clarify that by no means are they responsible for any of this criminal behavior. He's also not apologetic or conciliatory in any capacity, it seems. Yeah, the only time he apologized was when Anthony Rapp accused him. So let me go through let's actually just go through this timeline here. Okay. The first sexual assault accusations against Spacey surfaced in 2017 when the actor Anthony Rapp told BuzzFeed that Spacey, who was starring in Netflix's House of Cards at the time, had sexually assaulted him when he was 14. Spacey initially responded with a muddled apology note in which he came out as gay, a deflection that many criticized as conflating homosexuality and pedophilia, and claimed not to remember the incident. He wrote on Twitter, "If I did behave then as he describes, I owe him the sincerest apology for what would have been deeply inappropriate drunken behavior, and I am sorry for the feelings he describes having carried with him all these years." Insane tweet. It's the only time that he's come close to acknowledging any of the now multitude of allegations against him. But he later claimed that it was his publicist's fault. Like, he regrets saying that, and that it was like his publicist who made him put out that statement. Because what happened after that, and I don't think he thought this would happen. I think the only reason that he wrote this on Twitter is because he never in a million years predicted that this would be the beginning of the end for what at the time was a very illustrious career. He was Netflix's guy. Like, he was starring in House of Cards, which was the biggest show on Netflix. He had a number of big films in the works and couldn't have foreseen that there would have been consequences. Following this initial wave, he was dropped by his talent agency and publicist, fired from House of Cards, and scrubbed from film projects. He retreated from public life, with a representative telling Variety that he was seeking evaluation and treatment. Another thing that made people be like, oh, Kevin Spacey's like, there's some fucking shit in his past here. Like, what does that mean? Evaluation and treatment? But he has occasionally resurfaced to launch film comebacks and post bizarre defenses on YouTube and Twitter. In October of 2022, Rapp's case went to trial in New York, focusing on the younger man's claims of battery. Rapp sought $40 million in punitive and compensatory damages. Spacey denied the allegations on the stand, telling the court they are not true. The actor also expressed regret over his public apology, saying that his publicist encouraged him to make the statement. "I've learned a lesson, which is never apologize for something you didn't do. I regret my entire statement," said Spacey. The case was dismissed after a jury ruled that Spacey was not liable for battery. So I'm going to make this point, and I'll probably make it again, and I've made this point before, that there is an enormous burden of proof on on the prosecution, on those who have made the allegations, to prove that sexual abuse, that sexual assault took place. So when someone is acquitted, it doesn't mean that they're innocent. It means that there was not enough proof to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. And it's the same in the UK, where he also faced another trial with multiple allegations against him. And when we're talking about defendants who are powerful, who are famous, who have deep pockets, and who are being accused of something that they did years ago, it's in their favor. It's really hard. It's really hard for people who have been victimized to prove that they were victimized, especially when it took place decades ago. And that's why often sexual assault charges are not brought and sexual abusers don't go to trial. Like it doesn't make it to trial because of how difficult that burden of proof is. And so it's not to say that like okay, how do I voice this? It's the justice system not working, but it also doesn't mean that during trial the justice system isn't doing as it has set forth. Because in many of these cases, it is possible that via the requirements for the burden of proof being met, it's not being met. And so from a legal standpoint, a defendant can't be found guilty. But from a truth standpoint, it doesn't mean that that defendant is innocent. And especially when there are established patterns of behavior which show that this is not something that was a one-time occurrence. That's not, a one-off thing. And instead, like, there's a history of this behavior being repeated. Not a court of law, but the court of public opinion is a different thing entirely. Yes. And in Kevin Spacey's case, although he's been acquitted in multiple courts of law, he has not been in the court of public opinion. More than 30 men came forward with allegations against Spacey after Rapp went public, accusing him of misconduct ranging from non-consensual groping to the attempted rape of minors. The first of Spacey's UK charges arrived during summer 2022, stemming from incidents that allegedly occurred between 2005 and 2013 in London and Gloucestershire during Spacey's tenure as artistic director of London's Old Vic Theatre. The British government later authorized 7 more criminal charges for a series of sexual assaults, all involving the same complainant, that allegedly took place in London and Gloucester between 2001 and 2004. 3 more complainants testified during the month-long trial, each detailing alleged encounters with Spacey that they claimed involved groping and, in one instance, non-consensual oral sex. A jury found him not guilty after 2 days of deliberations. Also, just a side note, after the UK trial, a lot of the jury had a meet and greet with Kevin Spacey, because being a famous person is always a factor in criminal trials like this. Like, it is. Okay, so the timeline starts with Anthony Rapp in 2017, who said that Spacey had made a sexual advance after a party at his house in 1986. I was aware that he was trying to get with me sexually, said Rapp, who alleged that after other guests left, Spacey picked him up and put him on his bed before lying on top of him. In 2020, Rapp and an anonymous accuser filed a civil sexual assault lawsuit against Spacey under the New York Child Victims Act, seeking damages for severe emotional distress. Per Reuters, Spacey categorically denied Rapp's allegations in court papers and sought to dismiss the civil lawsuit. a bid that the judge rejected, though the second accuser's legal claims were dismissed because he refused to use his name during the proceedings. Spacey continues to deny the accusations. During his testimony, Rapp said he broke his silence about Spacey because I knew I was not the only one that the actor had made inappropriate sexual advances to. Rapp also told the court that Spacey was a fraud for not being open about his sexuality. Spacey testified that he did not publicly come out because of his father's homophobia. My father was a white supremacist and a neo-Nazi. Jesus Christ, the actor said. To call someone a fraud is to say that someone is living a lie. I was just reluctant to talk about my personal life. In October of 2022, the jury for the New York trial ruled that Rapp hadn't proved Spacey touched a sexual or intimate part and found Spacey not liable for battery. So again, it's very important to understand here that the onus was on Rapp and his legal team to prove from 30 years ago that Kevin Spacey had inappropriately touched Anthony Rapp when he was 14 years old, Shaming someone for not coming out is also a piece of shit behavior. Yeah, the way that this is framed here makes it sound shitty. Like not being open about your sexuality is not a valid point here, in my opinion. Okay, so then continuing on, there were a couple anonymous accusers after an Anthony Rapp one who said that he and Spacey had a sexual relationship when he was 14 and Spacey was 24. Another one who said that Spacey had groomed him when he was 17. A London performing arts teacher named Kate Edwards told the BBC that Spacey pressured her into having sex in 1986 when she was a 17-year-old assistant. Justin Dawes claimed that Spacey gave him alcohol and played gay pornography when he was 16. An anonymous accuser alleged that Spacey sexually assaulted him in West Hollywood in 1992. Prosecutors just decided not to file criminal charges in connection with that case, which they said fell outside the statute of limitations. So not every allegation against Kevin Spacey has made it to trial, right? Just like in any case where you have a powerful individual who has been accused by multiple people of victimizing them, not all those allegations are like charges are produced from them and then, a trial results. But what this does is it establishes a pattern, just like with Harvey Weinstein. Harvey Weinstein, there were like over 80 women who accused him, but not all of those accusations were charges that were brought against Harvey and ones that he was convicted on. They will pick, and same with Danny Masterson. Not all of the women who accused him were like not all of their accusations made it to the trial because prosecutors decide, what do we have the strongest proof for? What do we have the best chance of actually obtaining a conviction on this? Mark Ebenhock claimed that Spacey's assistant talked him into engaging in a sexual act with Spacey. An anonymous journalist said Spacey groped his genitals at a British club. Filmmaker Tony Montana said that Spacey grabbed my whole package at a Los Angeles bar. British bartender Chris Nixon claimed that Spacey grabbed my penis during an after party. Norwegian writer Ari Bain said Spacey grabbed him by the balls at a Nobel Peace Prize concert after party. Again, we're seeing a pattern here. Bain ended up taking his life in 2019. Actor Harry Dreyfus, who's Richard Dreyfuss's son, said Spacey groped him when he was 18. He called him a sexual predator and said in 2008, Spacey had groped him when they were rehearsing at Spacey's apartment. And he says, what disgusts me about Kevin was how safe he did feel. He knew he could funnel me in a room with my father and that I wouldn't say a word because his father was in that room, but he didn't see it. He knew I wouldn't have had the guts, and I didn't. An anonymous accuser said he woke up to Spacey performing oral sex on him. British bartender Daniel Beale claimed Spacey flashed his genitals at him. At least 20 men from the Old Vic Theatre alleged inappropriate sexual behavior by Spacey. News anchor Heather Unruck claimed Spacey sexually assaulted her 18-year-old son. And in some of these instances, like this one, his lawyers alleged that it was consensual. And when it comes to sexual misconduct trials, it's hard, something that juries are still imperfect on is this gray area of consent. And if it's established that people had a sexual relationship that was consensual, but then there were things that happened that weren't consensual, it muddies the waters. And that's another reason why these types of cases are really difficult to prosecute. LOL, this music. Yeah, let me change that. Okay, so it was following the Globe's report that Spacey posted a video to his Twitter account, Let Me Be Frank, in which he assumed the voice of his House of Cards character, Frank Underwood, appearing to address the allegations, telling viewers, if I didn't pay the price for the things we both know I did, I'm certainly not going to pay the price for the things that I didn't do. Very fucking weird. In 2019, Unruh's son dropped his civil lawsuit against Casey 6 days after filing it. Later that month, prosecutors in Massachusetts dropped the sexual assault charge against Spacey after Unruh's son refused to testify about a missing smartphone the defense had sought as evidence. An anonymous massage therapist alleged that Spacey forced him to grab his genitals. That accuser also died, and his estate later dismissed the suit. House of Cards staffers claim that Spacey created a toxic environment for young men. In 2017, 8 House of Cards staffers told CNN that Spacey had behaved inappropriately with them, with one PA alleging that Spacey put his hands down the assistant's pants while driving. He was a man in a very powerful position on the show, and I was someone very low on the totem pole and on the food chain there. It was a toxic environment for young men who had to interact with him at all in the crew cast background actors. And then in 2020, so he was actually, this is the one case where it did not go in his favor. He was ordered to pay $31 million to MRC, the studio behind the show, for breach of contract in relation to the allegations. MRC claimed that measures taken after Spacey's firing, including writing off his character, stopping production of the show's sixth season, and shortening it to meet deadlines, spurred exorbitant losses and petitioned a California court to confirm the arbiter's ruling in 2020. Although his attorneys have tried to throw out the case, arguing that his behavior with crew members did not go beyond sexual innuendos and innocent horseplay. See, the strategy is always admit to certain things, but not other things. Admit in a way where it was like, no, we flirted with each other. It was always consensual. Like, okay, yeah, I guess maybe it was inappropriate, but I never touched anyone. I never utilized my power to force anyone into any situation, any sexual situation. Embassy reports that Spacey has denied the allegations through his attorneys and spokesperson. 4 men who testified in the UK allege that Spacey assaulted them, testifying about non-consensual encounters with the actor. Spacey's most serious charge, which could have led to a life sentence in prison, stemmed from a 4th complaint, presumably the same incident investigated by the Scotland Yard in 2017. The accuser alleged falling asleep at his London apartment in 2008 and waking up to Spacey performing oral sex on him. In court, Spacey denied all assault allegations, claiming to have had a consensual relationship with the old Vic acquaintance and denying the driving incident, explaining, with corroboration from witnesses Elton John and David Furnish, that it couldn't have happened at the time the man claimed. He also denied meeting the second man at the 2005 charity event and called the Gloucester encounter a clumsy pass that he made while drunk. As for the London complainant, Spacey produced phone records that reportedly contradicted the alleged victim's account of what happened. After 2 days of deliberation, the jury found him not guilty on July 26. And in the UK, it, I believe, is the same as the US, where it must be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. And if the burden of proof has not been met, then it's not going to result in a conviction. Okay, let's watch some of this interview. It was a 2-hour interview, FYI, with Lex.
You said you feared death at the lowest point. What was the lowest point?
It was November 1st of 2017, and then Thanksgiving Day of that same year.
I never want to hear Lex Fridman's voice that loudly in my ear.
So let's talk about it. Let's talk about this dark time. Let's talk about the sexual allegations against you that led to you being canceled by, the entire world for the last 7 years. I would like to personally understand the sins, the bad things you did, and the bad things you didn't do. So I also should say that the thing I hope to do here is to give respect to due process. Innocent until proven guilty, that the mass hysteria machine of the internet and clickbait journalism doesn't do. So here's what I understand. There were criminal and civil trials brought against you, including the one that started it all when Anthony Rapp sued you for $40 million. In these trials, you were acquitted, found not guilty, and not liable. Is that right?
Yes.
I think that's really important, again, in terms of due process.
He seems so bored.
A lot, and I watched a lot in preparation for this on this point, including, of course, the recently detailed interviews you did with Dan Wooten and then Alison Pearson of The Telegraph. And those are all focused on this topic, and they go in detail where you respond in detail to many of the allegations. If people are interested in the details, they can listen to those. So based on that and everything I looked at, as I understand, you never prevented anyone from leaving if they wanted to, sort of in a sexual context, for example, by blocking the door. Is that right?
That's correct, yeah.
You always respected the explicit no from people, again, in the sexual context. Is that right?
That is correct.
You've never done anything sexual with an underage person, right?
Never.
And also, as is sometimes done in Hollywood.
I like the idea that he would admit yes to any of this.
Let me ask this. You've never explicitly offered to exchange sexual favors for career advancement, correct?
Correct.
In terms of bad behavior, what did you do? What was the worst of it? And how often did you do it?
Lex is a terrible interviewer.
Now, quite often, that everybody has a Kevin Spacey story. And what that tells me is that I hit on a lot of guys.
How often did you cross the line, and what does that mean to you?
I did a lot of horsing around. I did a lot of things that at the time I thought were sort of playful and fun, and I have learned since were not. And I have had to recognize that I crossed some boundaries, and I did some things that were wrong, and I made some mistakes, and that's in my past. I mean, I've been working so hard over these last 7 years to have the conversations I needed to have, to listen to people, to understand things from a different perspective than the one that I had, and to say, I will never behave that way again for the rest of my life.
Just to clarify, I think you're often too pushy with the flirting. And that manifests itself in multiple ways. But just to make clear, You never prevented anyone from leaving if they wanted to. You always took the explicit no from people as an answer. No, stop. You took that for the answer. You've never...
But like, okay. Obviously, Kevin is at this point not going to say anything that incriminates him. He and his team are presenting this as like, okay, you have to take some type of responsibility here. We obviously can't do it in a way where you will be criminally responsible. So instead, it's like, I have recognized that my behavior crossed lines, but none of those lines included pressuring people. So then what were the lines? You just flirted a little too hard. But do you see how even in an attempt to admit to inappropriate behavior, but not saying that it ever crossed any of these lines, he's actually like there. Yes, he did. Yes. No, you did cross lines, and even what you are admitting here. He's trying to portray himself as creepy, not criminal, classic tactic. Right. But it is like it's contradicting. It's contradicting this notion that he never ever pressured people, but yet he did cross lines while horsing around with men throughout his life.
Never done anything sexual with an underage person, and you've never explicitly offered to exchange sexual favors for career advancement. These are some of the sort of accusations that have been made, and in the court of law, multiple times have been shown not to be true.
But I have had a sexual life, and I've fallen in love, and I've been so admiring of people that I'm so romantic. I'm such a romantic person that there's this whole side of me that hasn't been talked about, isn't being discussed, but that's who I know. That's the person I know. It's been very upsetting to hear that some people have said, I don't have a violent bone in my body, but to hear people describe things as having been very aggressive is incredibly difficult for me. And I'm deeply sorry that I ever offended anyone or hurt anyone.
And there's the, I'm sorry, but also I didn't do anything criminally wrong. And it really was just causing offense. Yeah, I'm sorry you were offended. Oh boy. Yeah, it has clearly been established that Kevin Spacey has a history, has a pattern of predatory behavior. Like that has been established with the untold number of accusations against him that establish that pattern. And so it's one of those things where despite not being found guilty in the two separate trials that he had, it does not erase this pattern of behavior. And in his careful admittance here that he was that he was not an angel, that he was not perfect, that he made mistakes, that I think like shows you, oh yes, no, this is a man who his whole life has used his power and position to victimize people.
Anyway, it is crushing to me, and I have to work very hard to show and to prove that I have learned, I got the memo, and I will never, ever, ever behave in those ways again.
from everything I've seen.
But like how? So then tell us how you did behave.
People love you. Colleagues love you. Coworkers love you. There's a flirtatiousness. Another word for that is chemistry.
The
There's
memo.
chemistry between the people you work with.
And by the way, not to take
Lex sounds so bored. Does he always sound this bored?
anything away from my accountability for things I did where I got it wrong, I crossed the line, I pushed some boundaries. I accept all of that.
Wait,
But
I thought you didn't cross the line though. I thought no lines were crossed.
live in an industry in which flirtation, attraction, people meeting in the workspace and ending up marrying each other and having children. And so it is a space and a place where these notions of family, these notions of attraction, these notions of it's always complicated if you meet someone in the workspace and find yourselves attracted to each other. You have to be mindful of that, and you have to be very mindful that you don't ever want anyone to feel that their job is in jeopardy, or you would punish them in some way if they no longer wanted to be with you. So those are important things to just acknowledge.
Another complexity to this is
Okay, so he's acknowledging it now and saying like, yeah, these are things that you have to think about. But he's not acknowledging that there was any coercion in his past, which many of the allegations speak to.
seen is that there's just a huge number of actors that look up to you, a huge number of people in the industry that look up to you, so just and love you. I've seen just from this documentary, just a lot of people just love being around you, learning from you what it means to create great theater.
Yeah, because
great
some people are
film,
dumb
great
bitches.
Stories. And so that adds to the complexity.
yeah.
I wouldn't say it's a power dynamic like a boss-employee relationship. It's a admiration dynamic that is easy to miss and easy to take advantage of. Is that something you understand?
Yes. And I
I'm
also
rolling my
understand
eyes,
that there are
too.
people who met me and spent a very brief period of time with me, but presumed I was now going to be their mentor, and then behaved in a way that I was unaware of, that they were either participating or flirting along or encouraging me without me having any idea that at the end of the day, they were expecting something.
So it's their fault.
So
he's actually
these
the
are about
innocent one
relationships.
here.
These are about two people. These are about people making decisions, people making choices, and I accept my accountability in that. But there are a number of things that I've been accused of that just simply did not happen, and I can't say, and I don't think it would be right for me to say, well, I everything that's ever been I've been accused of is true, because we've now proved that it isn't and it wasn't. But I'm perfectly willing to accept.
No, that's okay. So he's very clearly been trained by his legal team and his PR team now in saying things that we proved it wasn't true, makes it sound a certain way versus they couldn't prove that it was true. Do we understand the difference there? There is a big difference between we disproved all these allegations, we proved that I am innocent, versus they could not provide the burden of proof was not met. There was doubt because there was not enough concrete evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he is guilty, because that's how the legal system works. And when it comes to sexual assault cases from decades ago, it is nearly impossible to prove those. Think about it. Think about how quickly that stuff happens sometimes, and how because of our lack of understanding, because these were not things that you could talk about 30 years ago, there are people who would never have thought at the time, like, oh, got to make sure that I get all the evidence here together. So in 30 years, when I finally come forward with my story, I'll have tangible evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that this person sexually assaulted me. Lex hasn't asked a single good question in this interview. Of course not.
That I had behaviors that were wrong and that I shouldn't have done.
There are also allegations against him that prosecutors declined to bring charges because of feeling like there wasn't enough evidence to go forward, which happens all the time. The reason that Harvey Weinstein's conviction in New York was overturned was due to an appeal being filed on the basis that some of the women accusers of Harvey Weinstein, whose accusations were not then charges brought against him, were used to testify in court to the pattern of behavior that Harvey Weinstein was responsible for, and to testify to his character. And because those allegations were not part of the formal charges against him, his legal team argued that his conviction should be overturned, and it was, which is awful that happened. But the point I'm trying to make here is that a lot of times there are many, many, many more victims whose accusations are not part of the charges being brought against the defendant, but that are used to establish a pattern of behavior.
And I am regretful for.
I think that also speaks to dark side of fame. The sense I got is that there are some people, potentially a lot of people, trying to make friends with you in order to get roles, in order to advance their career. So not you using them, but they trying to use you. What's that like? How do you know if somebody likes you for you?
He comes across as so stupid.
Or likes you for, like you said, you're a romantic. You see a person.
All of these questions are framing this as like Kevin Spacey's actually a victim here, and like, how tough is it to be a famous man when you don't know who likes you for you, when you don't know who you can trust? That's tough. How do you weed out people who are just using you?
You're like, I like this person, and they seem to like you. How do you know if they like you for you?
Well, to some degree, I would say that I have been able to trust my instincts on that, and that I've most of the time been right. But obviously in the last number of years, not just with people who've accused me, but just also people in my own industry, to realize that, oh, I thought we had a friendship, but I guess that was about an inch thick and not what I thought it was.
Yeah. Oh, I thought we were friends, but after like over 40 people have accused me of sexually abusing them, victimizing them, and establishing this clear predatory pattern of behavior, you're no longer friends with me?
But look, one shouldn't be surprised by that. I have to also say, you said a little while ago that the world had canceled me, and I have to disagree with you. I have to disagree because for 7 years, I've been stopped by people, sometimes every day, sometimes multiple times a day. And the conversations that I have with people, the generosity that they share, the kindness that they show, and how much they want to know when I'm getting back to work, tells me that there may be
he's like, not every single person in the world thinks I'm a creep, thinks that I'm a predator. So yeah,
a very loud minority, there is a quieter majority.
In the industry, have you been betrayed in life? And how do you not let that make you cynical?
I think betrayal is a really interesting word.
oh my God.
But I think if you're going to be betrayed, it has to be by those who truly know you. And I can tell you that I have not been betrayed.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
What in the Frank Underwood
For the times you cross the line,
dialogue?
do you take responsibility for the wrongs you've done?
Yes.
Are you sorry to the people you may have hurt?
Okay, so why don't you ask him more on that? Why don't you like talk about what lines were crossed?
Yes.
Emotionally.
Yes. And I have spoken to many of them.
Privately.
Which is where amends should be made.
Were they able to start finding forgiveness?
Absolutely. Some of the most moving conversations that I have had when I was determined to take accountability have been those people who said, thank you so much, and I think I can forgive you now.
If you got a chance to talk to the Kevin Spacey of 30 to 40 years ago,
Wow.
what would you tell him to change about his ways? And how would you do it? What would be your approach? Would you be nice about it? Would you smack him around?
I think if I were to go back that far, I probably would have found a way to not have been as concerned about my revealing my sexuality and hiding that for as long as I did. I think that had a lot to do with confusion and a lot to do with mistrust, both my own and other people's.
For most of your life, you were not open.
Yeah, also, Lex doesn't do follow-up on any of this. It's just, it's giving Kim Kardashian and Khloe Sevigny, where you just question Kevin's very rehearsed, scripted response. Question.
Public about being gay. What was the hardest thing about keeping who you love a secret?
That I didn't find the right moment of celebration to be able to share that.
That must be a thing that weighs on you, to not be able to fully celebrate your love.
You know, Ian McKellen said after 40, he was 49 when he came out.
He's a horrible
27
interviewer.
years he'd been a professional actor.
Don't bring Ian
Being in the
McKellen
closet.
into this.
And he said he felt it was like he was living a part of his life not being truthful, and that he felt that it affected his work when he did come out because he no longer felt like he had anything to hide. And I absolutely believe that that is what my experience has been and will continue to be. I am sorry about the way I came out, but Evan and I had already had the conversation. I had already decided to come out, and so it wasn't like, I was forced to come out, but it was something I decided to do. And by the way, much against Evan's advice, I came out in that statement, and he wishes that I had not done so.
Yeah, you made a statement when the initial accusation happened. That could be up there as one of the worst social media posts of all time. It's like 2 for 1.
Don't hold back. Now, come on. Really tell me how
The
you
first
feel.
part, you kind of implicitly admitted to doing something bad, which was later shown and proved completely to never have happened. It was a lie.
No, I basically said that I didn't remember what this person was, that Anthony Rapp was claiming from 31.
Does Lex Fridman refer to himself as a journalist? Because that is journalistic malpractice. I know it's Lex Fridman, but that is really irresponsible to say that it was proved that it didn't happen when what happened was the jury decided that it wasn't proved enough that it did happen. There's a fucking difference, man. That is so irresponsible to flat out say that it was proved to have not taken place. It is a totally different thing.
Years before, I had no memory of it. But if it had happened, if this embarrassing moment had happened, then I would owe him an apology. That was what I said. And then I said, and while I'm at it, I think I'll come out. And, it was definitely not the greatest coming out party ever. I will admit that.
From the public perception, the first part of that, so first of all, the second part is a horrible way to come out. Yes, we all agree. And then the first part, from the public viewpoint, they see guilt in that, which also is tragic.
If you Google search Lex, it says people also search for Elon Musk and Joe Rogan. Oh.
Because at least that
Hogan, thank you
particular
for the
accusation
gifted.
is a very dramatic one.
Spam
It's a $40
Tana.
million lawsuit. It's
Thank
a
you for
big
the 2
deal.
months.
And an underage person was shown to be false.
Well, but you're melding two things together. The lawsuit didn't happen until 2020, and then it didn't get to court until 2022. We're back in 2017 when it was just an accusation he made in BuzzFeed magazine. Look, I was backed into a corner. When someone says, you were so drunk you won't remember this thing happened, what's your first instinct? Is your first instinct to say this person's a liar? Or is your first instinct to go, what? What? 31 years at a party I don't even remember throwing? Obviously, a lot of investigation happened after that.
I know. So he's saying that if someone says, yeah, you sexually assaulted me, that rather than know yourself as a person, be like, wait, I'm not a rapist. Like, I don't sexually assault people. I'm not an abuser. You go, oh, well, I don't remember that happening, but sorry. Like, that's not this isn't the defense that you think it is, Kevin, because the truth is that no PR spin, no legal advice can get around how fucking bad that post was and how it's the closest he's come to acknowledging his guilt, acknowledging himself as a fucking predator.
We were then able to prove in that court case that it had never occurred. But at the moment, I was sort of being told I couldn't push back. You have to be kind.
The onus of proof is on
even to me
is on
now,
the prosecution.
None of it sounds right. But I don't know that I could have said anything that would have been.
Why? Like, guys, we know that it is not easy to come forward as a victim of sexual abuse for a number of fucking reasons, but one being that you have to prove you were abused. This is not like, some other type of crime happened and you are a victim, but you don't have to, it's not on you. It's not on you to play an enormous role in getting justice for yourself. Doesn't work. That it's just it's a thing that's unique to sexual abuse cases. Now I know where I did this podcast. The man is a sociopath. Oh, I can lie my way out of this for sure. Yeah, he's a fucking freak. Like, we're not going to watch it again because I've watched it before, but go back and watch his Frank Underwood video he put out and then the Christmas video he put out. He's a fucking weirdo, man. Anyway, so going back to what I was saying, Kevin and his team spent a lot of time smearing his accusers, of course, in various ways, saying that they were trying to get a cash grab, that these were people that he had consensual relationships with. These were people who were social climbing, who used him. And, I think, okay, anyone whose instinct is that victims who come forward alleging or people who come forward alleging sexual abuse are doing so because they benefit from it. That it's like this guarantee that you benefit from it. That it's just a total willful misunderstanding of how difficult it is to make an accusation like that. I think that like you almost for people who cannot understand that because they've never been in that situation, it's like I wonder if they were ever in that situation, if they would treat it differently. If they were like, oh, this is what happens when you accuse a powerful man of something. Oh no, there's not a benefit to it other than the hope that you can get justice or that you'll encourage other people to come forward with their stories. Like the likelihood of it happening being so low, it is asinine to think that people come forward because they benefit in some, like there's some guarantee to them benefiting, like, oh, money, fame. No, it's not if not near impossible for survivors to get help to come forward. I've been in this situation. It's ass. Yeah. And what happens is every time a big case happens where there is not a conviction because it's fucking hard to prove that the defendant committed acts of sexual abuse, then it creates a chilling effect and it makes it so that other victims don't come forward. That like they see that and they go, yep. Once again, I'm reminded that to come forward is a very, 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 very low possibility of getting justice and a very high possibility of this just continuing to ruin my life.
Satisfactory to anybody.
Okay. Well, there's a almost convincing explanation for the worst social media post of all time. I almost accept it.
I'm really surprised. I guess you haven't read a lot of media posts because I can't believe that's the actual worst one.
It's beautifully bad. That's how bad that social media post is. As you mentioned,
Beautifully
Liam Neeson
bad.
and Sharon Stone came out in support of you recently, speaking to your character. A lot of people who know you, and some of whom I know, who have worked with you privately, show support for you, but are afraid to speak up publicly. What do you make of that? I mean, to me personally, this just makes me sad because perhaps that's the nature of the industry, that it's difficult to do that, but I just wish there would be a little bit more courage in the world.
I don't think it's about the industry. I think it's about our time. I think it's the time that we're in, and people are very afraid.
Just afraid, just a general
No,
fear.
they're literally afraid that
Lex puts me to sleep,
they're going to
man.
get canceled if they stand up for someone who has been. And I think we've seen this many times in history. This is not the first time it's happened.
All right. Yeah, so that was 2 hours, by the way. They had an over 2 hour conversation, and that was just a 20-minute part of it. Yikes. I just want to point out these statements that he made as well. I live in an industry where there's a tremendous amount of conversation about redemption from a lot of people who are very serious people in very serious positions who believe in it. That guy who finally got out of prison who was wrongly accused. We see so many people say, let's find a path for that person. Let's help that person rejoin society. Okay. But there's an odd situation where if you're in the entertainment industry, you're not offered that kind of path. And I hope that the fear that people are experiencing will eventually subside and common sense will get back to the table. What are you talking about, dude? You live in an industry in which people are constantly talking about redemption. Like, that guy got out of jail. Let's help him rejoin society. But also it's an industry where you're not offered that kind of path. And also, is he saying that, like, okay, this is, first of all, this is Hollywood. Are we talking about the same industry? Because there's plenty of people who are shitty, who have done terrible things, who have never lost their careers, or where if they have, they've been allowed back. This is not something where every single time those who have been accused of horrible things are cast out of the industry. Like, that's not how that's the problem. The problem is that there's so little accountability, that there's so little instances of powerful men facing consequences for being predators or just pieces of shit. They live in an industry where they allow assaulters to run rampant. It took a monumental amount of work to get Harvey Weinstein behind bars. There's so little accountability. I feel like in Kevin's mind, okay, let me armchair this. Kevin Spacey knows that he's guilty. He knows. He's lucky that he did not wind up the way Harvey Weinstein did, okay? So in his mind, he's like, wait a second. Why am I not getting let back into Hollywood? I see examples of other powerful guys who have been accused of shit, who have been let back in, or who, you know, like petitions being signed for them. Like people still working with them. People work with Woody Allen still. And I'm sure he's looking at it like, I'm off the hook. I'm not facing any any legal repercussions. So why am I not one of those guys who's being let back in? I genuinely think that that's what his mind must be doing here. And why he's like, look at my friends Sharon Stone and Liam Neeson who are trying to help me get back, and I know there's more people, but they're afraid to stand up for me because they'll get canceled too. Does he not care that those people should have had consequences they aren't facing? No. He doesn't care. I just got in, but oh no, not Liam. Are we really surprised? Liam Neeson, let me pull up his old comments on. Are we really surprised that Liam Neeson is a piece of shit? Remember when he said in an interview that he is ashamed to think he once stalked the streets looking for a black bastard to kill after someone close to him told him she'd been raped. My immediate reaction was, did she know who it was? No. What color were they? The woman told him a black person had raped her. Liam Neeson, quote, I went up and down areas with a kosh, hoping I'd be approached by somebody. Kosh is a heavy stick used as a weapon. I did it for maybe a week, hoping some black bastard would come out of a pub and have a go at me about something, you know, so that I could kill him. Now, he says he regrets it, but this is a guy who, when a friend told him that she had been raped and she didn't know who it was, but just that that the person was black, he went out to find any black person to kill. Like, that is fucking deranged, man. That is absolutely deranged. Anyway, also, these are two actors over a certain age. Like, this is always the way. You're not going to catch younger actors being like, you know what? This is bullshit. They were found not guilty in a court of law, and so therefore they're innocent, and let's ignore all this other stuff. And they should be allowed back in. They should be welcomed in with open arms. You ain't going to catch that, people saying that under the age of 50. Anyway, Kevin saying, I don't think it's the industry, I think it's our time, it's the time we're in, is further pointing out how he's like, back in the day, people didn't care. People didn't care if you had all these allegations against you. It's just this time period. Like, this is not the defense that people think it is. This is related back to what we were talking about with Jerry Seinfeld, where it's like, that's the problem these days, is cancel culture and wokeness, which are terms that they use in a derogatory way when what they're talking about is accountability, when what they're talking about is not being able to act with impunity. When the truth is like, yeah, we have progressed in certain ways, but there are still plenty of monsters who aren't being held accountable. Okay, you know what? We should, it's like a drinking game. Every single time I bring up the fact, that David O. Russell still has a career. Perfect example. David O. Russell still has a career in 2024. He has multiple movies coming out. He admitted to assaulting his trans niece and like all these instances of him being so abusive to people in Hollywood. He literally tackled my old boss. He physically tackled the head of Columbia Pictures at a party, at an award show this year. Like, he's an abusive piece of shit, and he continues, and his movies aren't making money. He is losing so much money. I don't get it. I'll never understand it. I truly will never understand it, because all of the abusive shit aside, he is losing studios so much money. His movies have not, he hasn't made a decent movie in over 10 years. So why, from a business standpoint, is he continuing to get work? I don't know. I don't get it.